I think we're rolling, and yep, there we are. The timer's counting, so I'm live. Well, not live; it'll be recorded. But with Julie Garner, very happy to have you. Um, the career that you've had and the influence you've had on the youth in the golf industry, and as they go on to do great things in life, and there's a lot to talk about today. I've been very fortunate that you agreed to come on, especially on short notice.
No problem. Happy to do it. Big fan of your podcast and everything. You've had some fabulous guests, and it's an honor to be a part of that for sure.
You know, we met very briefly, or were introduced through Mike Forsett at the Painter shoe booth at the PGA show, and you were overly humble in saying, I wouldn't be that good of a guest, but once Mike started telling me about what you've done and just meeting, I mean, I would say that my sense of someone who is a good person or not a bullshit artist, or the phrase that has been coined nowadays, and I'd like to think I had some influence, was the politician mentality, where you're not going to say one thing and do another. I think was very strong. And Mike said, yeah, she's a really, really good person. She's phenomenal at what she does. So it was a no-brainer to ask you to come on.
Awesome.
And I know we talked a little bit about it then, and you had to get through the season, but we're going to have a lot of fun today in talking your career, what you do, and then all the cool stuff in college golf.
Great.
One thing that I want to ask you about is, as we talked very, very briefly in the pre-show, is as I was studying up on you and your career, in particular in golf and coaching, is I don't understand, and maybe I want to hear your theory or your idea on it. Why, with the success that you've had, 6 national championships, if I'm not mistaken, why you are not in the discussion when they talk about great collegiate coaches of all time? And I know that the big men's sports, the Bear Bryants, the Nick Sabans, and basketball, you got Krzyzewskis and John Woodens, that those are so popular. But until I met you at the PGA show, I had not heard of you. And I've been in the golf business for the better part of 40 years. Do you have a theory on that, or is there a reason for that someone of your success is not advertised or marketed more? I guess those might be strong words, but not pushed out there in the golf world more.
Well, I mean, I think first of all, it's great right now to see what's happening in women's sports in general, right? I mean, between Caitlin Clark and Nelly Korda, I mean, doing some fabulous things. So it's really cool to be a part of women's sports. But I think NCAA Division II is just, it's a little bit underneath the radar, fortunately or unfortunately. So I think, and I mean, there are just some perennial names that will always be associated with great golf. I mean, Stanford, what Ann Walker's done out there is incredible. And obviously Dan Brooks at Duke. And, there's so many fabulous coaches doing some great things at the Division I level. But I will say that I do think that NCAA Division II golf is a little bit underrated and certainly under-marketed, I guess, or under-publicized. Just because, again, golf isn't, golf. We're not a golf school. I mean, that's kind of not what our vision and mission for our students and our student athletes is. So, I think we're just kind of following along with that mission. And I think the reason that I've been at Rollins for as long as I've been there is because, my philosophy and the school's philosophy are in lockstep agreement. I mean, that this journey can't just be about becoming an LPGA Tour player. I mean, certainly that's an option for our players, but it's not the only option. When you get a degree from Rollins, you have a plethora of opportunities in front of you, and they realize what a big, exciting world it is. And our players still play golf at a very high level, and we have several in the golf business, but they go on to do other things. And, I do my best to put stuff out there. Like, we have 4 alums from Rollins who are in the World Golf Hall of Fame, and not just, their state Hall of Fame or whatever, but in the World Golf Hall of Fame. And I'm going to bet, that there probably isn't a school that has more, at least at this point. And so I mean, I think we've done a lot of really big things, but Rollins is not real big about tooting our own horn. And as for me, I mean, I just enjoy the job, and have never really, I don't really need people to, say, oh, you're the greatest or whatever, I mean, because the other thing is, as we know, golf is a very humbling sport. And Certainly, coaching golf is an incredibly
Mhm.
humbling sport, and so I think our players are really good at keeping me grounded and making me feel like I'm not necessarily the John Wooden or Nick Saban of coaching, when it comes to that. But I just think it's become more popular now. The bigger Division I programs and sports, and I get it. I mean, we're just not at that level, but to the people that matter, they know what we've done and what we're capable of doing, and that's really at the end of the day all you can ask.
I would have to imagine that your record and your career is a very big draw for a lot of parents and their kids when considering, let's say they're considering Rollins or they're considering another Division II school or even smaller Division I or wherever they're looking at. But do and I'm going to use like University of South Carolina Beaufort is about 6 miles from my front door.
Right.
And when they started, they've done very well with their college golf program.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a large part of that, and a couple of the coaches have been very good friends of mine, and we've talked about this. A large part of that is, Beaufort County, which is where Hilton Head and Bluffton and Beaufort, South Carolina are. We've got 47 golf courses in the county. And obviously Hilton Head's a beautiful place. We just had the RBC Heritage. So their recruiting process becomes much easier when you're trying to recruit a kid or their family, because the family often will end up buying a condominium or something, or they'll move here eventually because they vacation here.
Mm-hmm.
But at Rollins, and I'm think you guys are in a beautiful place as well.
Right.
Does that make your job a little bit easier when
It,
when kids come for visits?
Sure. I mean, in fact, we get a lot of alums who end up staying and living in the area. Winter Park is a gorgeous, it's a small town, but we have the benefits of being in a big city. So, it's easy to attract international students because we have the Orlando International Airport that's half an hour from us. We're less than an hour from the beach, and obviously we're on a lakeside, so a lot of it, I mean, the beauty of it obviously no one is safe anymore. You can't guarantee anybody's safety anywhere, but Winter Park is a very
Mm-hmm.
kind of insulated little town. And, I feel very confident that the kids, will be safe when, if they want to go for a run at dusk or whatever, they can feel pretty confident they're running among some of the most highly priced real estate, areas certainly in the Central Florida area. So that part is great. And yes, having 1,000 courses right here in town that, if you need to find a place to play, you take two groups on a Saturday or whatever, you can do that. And we have some fabulous real golf partners real close by. We love Winter Park Golf Course. Winter Park 9 is a really neat, renovated. Keith Rebb and his group, renovated it several years ago and made it a really fun test of golf. And it's literally within walking distance of the campus. And then Interlochen Country Club is a private course about 6-minute drive from where we are. And so we, enjoy practicing and playing there. And, we host our spring tournament at Orange Tree Golf Club, which is it's a very good test of golf. Tight and beautiful. It's always in great condition, and just, so it's a great place to host a tournament. And and we've hosted a tournament at Country Club of Orlando before. So yeah, this is an easy sell for almost all the way through it, and that's before you even start talking about the academics that we have to offer, etc. So and the career path that people can take when they get a degree from Rollins.
I've got to ask you, because that's one thing to have the facility to bring them there that attracts kids there. It's another thing to have a record like you have had while you're there. And the people who were there before you, I think, helped establish that as well, that
For
were
sure.
mentors of yours. But you still have to, and I'm just going to read some of this stuff so everyone, again, if they have not heard of you as I had, I mean, you're in the Women's Golf Coaches Hall of Fame in 2018. You've been National Coach of the Year, National Division II Champions 2003, 2006, 2015, 2016. And everyone, bear with me. This is quite a long list, but it's very, very
Okay.
impressive. You went 6 Division II national championships, 4 of those in a row. 5 runner-ups, and 7 Sunshine State Conference championships. And I'm sure there's a litany of other things in there that I can sit here and talk for a long time. But you obviously, again, getting them there is one thing. The history is another thing. But you also have to have them produce once they're there. So, and what I have to remind myself is, because I had a few juniors. I did not coach college. I interviewed for a few jobs many, many years ago. But the one thing I always taught or had to remind myself was you're dealing with late teens and early 20-year-old kids.
Right.
And that is a very difficult age sometimes to deal with, as they're away from home for the first time. They have lost the structure their family provided, and now they're looking to you or the coaching staff or the school to somewhat provide it as they learn how to be individuals and take responsibility for themselves. Along with that, you have to get them to produce on the golf course. So without giving up your secret sauce, because we don't want all the other your competitors to know what you do. But can you speak a little bit to how you go about that with your teams over the years, and how you get them to be so successful in sometimes a very challenging time in a student athlete's life?
Yeah, I mean, I get a kick out of people, when you tell them that you're a college golf coach, they're like, "Oh, that's the coolest job ever." And I said, "It really is." I said, "But, you also have to remember that my career depends on 18 to 22-year-old college girls." So, that's a whole, that's an all-encompassing sort of thing. And I think that's kind of what you have to remember as a coach is you really, first of all, every player is different and every player learns differently, and they all develop and mature on their own timeline. And as much as I'd like to say I control that, I have no control over that, and it's gotten endlessly more layered and complicated with this generation and the things they've been through with COVID, and just now all the focus on mental health and all of that. I mean, there are a lot of times where I feel like a lot of things are way above my pay grade in a lot of instances in dealing with the young people. But I think the first thing I hope that our players know is that I love and care about them as people, not just their stroke average, but how they're navigating this path to becoming an adult, and what are their needs and concerns, and what are their goals and aspirations. And we're here to help them get started on that path. And I think when your players know how much you care about them, and so for me, it's picking them up or taking them to the airport, or if they need it, if they end up going to the ER. I mean, I live 8 minutes from the closest, the hospital, and I've had to go to the ER with kids with illnesses and all that sort of thing. And I think when they and their families know that that's what you'll do, I think they'll allow you to push them more than if all you care about is them shooting even par. And I think especially when it comes to the postseason, that's really important that they know that you're all in, so that they're going to let you, they're going to let you lead them a little bit more than if I were just there to say, just there to take care of the ones who shoot even par or whatever. So, I mean, to me, that's the biggest part of it. And that also means that you set yourself up sometimes for disappointment, because you'll have kids that it's hard to get through, or impossible, or or you never think you reach them, and then but then you'll get a letter or an email or a phone call a few months or a few years later that just said, I really appreciate everything you did, and I know you didn't think I was listening, but they repeat a couple of the cliches that I like to tell them. And so that, I mean, and then you've been successful, even if you didn't win a championship with that particular student athlete. You've at least been successful, because I think you mentioned it. My goal for all of these kids is to help them learn to be accountable and responsible for themselves. I mean, if I don't have a rule book. There are a lot of programs that have all the rules, and I tried that a few times. But first of all, there's always going to be things that aren't covered in the rule book, and then what do you do? Well, I thought I could do that because it wasn't in the rule book. I'm like, so I don't want to get into that, But I'm just, my expectations for our players is to be accountable and responsible for themselves. And that really encompasses everything that we could help them understand. And, but I think, yeah, that I probably get away with pushing them a little bit more because they know that I really care about them as people, and I always will. So I mean, and as far as I
Yeah,
don't I don't know about preparing, getting them ready for the postseason and all that. I mean, we've had plenty of opportunity to do that, but I think to me, it's about them knowing that we've got their back.
I think it was Simon Sinek that said leadership requires two things: trust and followers, and you don't get one without the other. And when you think of how simple that is, but how powerful a statement that is, I mean, it holds very, very true.
Mhm.
And I think that the fact that you treat them as individuals before you treat them as golfers, or you treat them as part of the Rollins family or the golf team family, or uh, however you want to view that. I think that is very big and probably lacking in society as a whole, where everything seems to be off into tribes, and we're so segmented. And if you can bring people in together, at first as an individual, or first as a collective group, or a group of individuals who are pursuing a very similar interest, and that they realize that everyone in that group has similar struggles, and you, as having the experience you do, you play golf, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But they know that you probably went through these things, and they're going to look to you for help and advice. And it goes far more than just the X's and O's of the swing, or how to play this golf course. Hey, I'm having trouble with this, the way I'm thinking about it. How do I go about that? And I think with your successful playing career, they have a lot of confidence and trust that the answer you give them is going to be, if it's not spot on, it's probably going to be pretty close. And that you go and do these things for them when they might not have family or anyone they know for 1,000 miles from there,
Right.
is very, very strong and helpful to, especially again, this is the first time most of them are away from their families or their parents or their guardians, whoever it is in their life. And can be a scary situation when they're in a predicament that they don't know how to handle.
Yeah, I mean, I think because I think it's horrible when you're sick, when you're traveling, when you're out of town or whatever. So, like for example, I had a kid. I don't remember if was it chicken pox, something like. But anyway, something incredibly contagious. And of course, the school wanted to isolate her in this a place kind of it was a they were kind of that we really didn't have a policy in place for it and didn't have a spot for her to go, and they were going to kind of isolate her. And I said, well, she needs to stay with me. I mean, she was from Asia. I'm not going to make her stay in some room by herself and have people in gloves and masks deliver food and that sort of thing. So she stayed at my house. And of course everybody's like, well, did you have chicken? I'm like, I don't remember what I had, but if I catch it, I'll catch it, and if I don't, I don't. But but I mean, something like that. I mean, I think you just have to be willing. Like I said, you have to have their back in good times and bad. And I can't imagine being, having, if I were a parent and, and my child was, continents away and was sick. Boy, I sure hope I have somebody there, to help, and someone other than just a classmate or whatever, an adult, and because they always say, if one of my student athletes has a problem, well, they're not going to call their English professor. They're going to call me. I mean, the parents, and so I think you have to be willing to do that type of thing again, so that when push comes to shove, they're going to want to do their best for you and for the program that brought them here. So I take, I tell people all the time, as much as I like to joke around and stuff, I take my job really seriously. And I take the reputation of our program very seriously, and all of that. So I mean, everything that we do has to reinforce the things that we stand for, and one of those is, yeah, if you've got your family member who's sick, we're going to make sure we help them get better. So
How much of NCAA regulation inhibits or goes too far? And I don't want you to pick anything out in particular if you don't want. I don't want to get you in trouble with the
right, I
NCAA.
can't
But
afford a fine or
I'm
suspension,
I
right?
had, but I mean, you see, and here's kind of where I'm coming with this question. Going way back to the late '70s and early '80s, I had some cousin that played uh, big time basketball. He won a national championship.
Neat.
And then I asked him one time, as I was coming up, and I was a decent basketball player. I was not Division I material. But I asked him as I was kind of getting recruited. I said, "Did you guys get paid to play when you were playing?" And he said, "No, but they would give you a very good job in the summer that you kind of you didn't have to have a lot of energy to do this job, and you got paid to do it." And then as I got into college, I heard some not we well, I went to Ferris State, so it was a small Division II school, the golf program up at Ferris.
Yeah,
But I had
very
some
good.
friends who played Division I, big time football. And they said, no, you just get taken care of. I mean, you get your food, you get this. If you get in some trouble that's not too serious, they're just going to, okay, don't do it again. We'll take care of this. But nowadays, I think what the NCAA did with, this is coming from parents who told me this, of students that I had, were if they were on scholarship, they were not allowed to hold a job. They're not allowed to have a booster or a coach or someone take them to dinner. And I can remember when Tiger Woods went to dinner with Arnold Palmer, that became a big story for a little while. Did Arnold pay or Mr. Palmer pay for Tiger's lunch? And then that would be a violation. But as I watched this over the last couple of decades, the regulations NCAA imposes is basically ridiculous. And again, I'm looking at this from afar. I don't know details, so I'm asking. Now they go like complete opposite to the NIL.
Right.
And it's like, okay, the kids can get paid now. But so you go from, you don't even let a kid have a job. So if they're coming from a foreign country, they're coming from a financially strapped family, and they don't have the money to go to get a burger with their friends. I mean, how do you navigate things like that?
Well, yeah. So the whole NIL thing and all of this now, I mean, I think we went from 0 to 100 overnight. And now it feels like the Wild West.
That's what I'm looking at.
You know,
this doesn't make sense.
Yeah. And I mean, the transfer portal now, you can have kids be at 3 or 4 different schools. There's so many things, and I'd love to tell you I'm an expert on the rules, but I'm really not. And so, I try not to do, my joke is, well, if it's a nice thing to do, it's probably not legal, whatever it is. But,
exactly.
I mean,
if it's common sense, they probably have a rule against it.
Right. And so, for example, we had a hurricane come here it was headed right for Orlando. It was a huge one. Everybody's, freaking out. And it was really before, the school used to shelter the kids in a very large building on campus and everything until it passed by and blah, blah, blah. And it wasn't the ideal situation because you're in a basement type of thing with a bunch of other kids. And it wasn't that, they tried to make it as fun as they could, but I mean, there's a lot of kids and you're not going to probably get a whole lot of rest or be very comfortable. You certainly can't go out when the weather turns bad. So before that came, I had some players from all over and they were like, well, coach, what do we do? And I said, well, and some of them, it wasn't, they didn't have enough time to fly out, or whatever, when the school, said, hey, we're going to close down or whatever. So, I said, well, look, if you all want to come, you can come stay, at my house if you want to. And they said, well, we have some friends that, would like to evacuate too. And I'm like, yeah, sure. Okay, come on. I think I had 10 or 11 girls I have a 2-bedroom, but it's a townhouse and there were bodies and mattresses and couches and everything everywhere. They had all this junk food. They watched all these movies and looking back at it, it probably, I don't know if it under the letter of the law, if it was legal, but I'm like, I mean, it was the right thing to do. I mean, these kids, wanted to feel safe or whatever. The funny thing was I ended up sleeping in my upstairs hallway, just on the carpet. I mean, I had a pillow or whatever. And I just kind of, 3 a.m. I look at them like, I'm responsible for all these people's children. What if the hurricane comes right over my house? I'm like, so I'm like, I'm so stupid. But, the funny thing is, and some of the kids that evacuated here were part of our national championship team. One of them still says to this day, it's her favorite college memory. Cause I had lacrosse players, soccer players, a few of my golfers, and they was just like a slumber party, movie night, etc. And it ended up that it petered out. It didn't even hit us, and everything. But they talk about that all the time. And one of them literally said that's one of her favorite college memories. But I mean, was that legal? I mean, I hope the NCAA. Well, maybe they are listening. Whatever. It's fine. But something like that. I think even someone, I remember way back in the day, a coach, I don't know, he let a kid borrow a suit, or somebody bought a kid a suit for a teammate's funeral. And then they said, no, no, that's not legal, and I'm like, this is when, it's, and I understand a lot of the reasons for a lot of the rules, because there will be people that will slip through the loopholes and do the wrong things and all of that. But, to try and make all NCAA sanctioned sports fit into one little box, it's really hard to do that. And I'm fortunate we don't have to worry about the NIL. I don't really have kids, doing that sort of thing. But, there have already been several scams. I mean, there's been a company that's tried to say, hey, we'll market you, and we'll split the money or something like that. And it turns out it was a scam, and it was NCAA violation. And nobody understands any of this now. And,
Wow.
but yeah, there's kids making millions of dollars, millions. And, so I mean, it's hard to keep up with. And anytime I have a new scenario, hey, and especially now social media, right? That wasn't here a few years ago. And, for the longest time, I was afraid to do anything or say anything, or, anything on social media. And so, I mean, there are just so many places where you can slip up. And I just, at the end of the day, I try to say, okay, as long as I'm not, paying a kid, I mean, doing something like paying a kid to come here, or making
Right.
promises that we can't keep, or that, we can't tell anybody. I'm, we try to just do the right thing. And when we find out we screwed up, we, self-report, and that's the way it is. But, yeah, I mean, the NCAA manual is this thick, and there's no pictures, by the way. So, I mean, it's just bylaw after bylaw, and it's just a lot to keep up with. But the main things we have to keep up with are eligibility, recruiting, and financial aid. So, so we try to understand those main points, and hopefully someone else has read the other 18 chapters and keep us somewhat on the tracks. But yeah, I feel like the NCAA went from 0 to 100 with this whole NIL thing, and now the transfer portal, and it's a lot. And I realize a lot of it was necessary, I guess, or way past time, but I think we could have kind of maybe eased into it a little bit more, piece by piece, instead of just opening up the floodgates. And now all of a sudden, you've got kids buying Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and, so hopefully they're investing some of it too and not spending it all. So,
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense that what they've done, as you said, 0 to 100, and there was no in between. And to me, as someone watching this, it looks like it was very mentally lazy on their part, that they did not take the time to look at their processes. And as you said, it was broad scoped across all NCAA collegiate athletics. It's
right.
like, well, okay, is there anything that is broad scope, in particular in athletics? You can't just make a giant brushstroke and expect to get rid of everything. And it wasn't like the, I mean, I'm sure some people inside would say that the system was broken, but I mean, I remember going back to a kid when SMU got the sanction, the death penalty, and they had everything wiped out
Mm-hmm.
when they got caught to be, then that was that was a huge scandal. So it's not like the system was completely broken. There were people who were caught and they were reprimanded and they received their penalty, and then the world moved on. But to go to extremes, it just seems like, okay, well, this is more or less of a nuisance, and it's inhibiting our fundraising for this school or that school or for the organization. Let's just make this broad stroke, and we can tell everybody we've done what we can.
Right.
And in the meantime, we're screwing the college athletes and the coaches and the universities to make it very, very difficult. It
Mm.
just doesn't make sense. But we can talk for hours on that. And that's not my focus. I want to
Right.
focus on you and your team
Right.
and what y'all do. Um, the as far as practice time, is it still limited to how many hours you can have structured practice?
Yes. So we are allowed 20 hours of countable athletically related activity per week during the season. So from from in our fall season starts probably September 1st and goes, 60, we have a 60-day window in the fall, because the fall is our non-championship season. And this is Division 2, this doesn't apply to Division 1. So, and then, so you can do up to 20 hours a week. So that includes, strength and conditioning and any practice. that sort of thing. It doesn't include team meetings, I don't think. But now I can't, like you said, I don't even remember. But we at Rollins, because of our, academic class schedules, et cetera, I can't remember the last time we reached 20 hours of Kara in a week. I mean, we're usually at about 14 to 17, and so during the championship season, which is spring, we have to give them at least one day off a week. So, and that when we're not traveling is usually Sundays. In the fall, which is our non-championship season, we have to give them at least 2 days off per week. So you're navigating all of this, and then you've got class schedules that if you've got 7 players, it's 7 different class schedules. And for example, yesterday I had a group that played. I went out with a group that teed off at 7:39 and played 9 holes, and then I had a group that teed off at 4 o'clock. So at another course, because of class schedules, that's how we had to do it. So, but it was still 2 hours, out of their day or whatever. And this morning they had workouts from 6 to 7:15. We work out as a team from 6 to 7:15 on Mondays and Wednesdays, and so that's 2.5 hours that you're putting into strength and conditioning as a team. And then the rest of it is, like if you travel but you don't play, you can count that as a day off. And but if you travel and then you practice, then you have to count those practice hours towards your Kara, et cetera. But just due to our class schedules and everything else, I cannot remember the last time we reached 20 hours of Kara in a week, but there are a lot of schools that do. And I think there are some programs, that have a little bit different priorities than we do, who, they expect the student athletes that, even though they have to end at 20, they expect those student athletes to put in more. Wink, wink, blah, blah, blah. It's optional, but, or it's captain's practices. But that happens. I don't know how you would legislate or regulate that until a kid decides that's not the right thing to do. I don't know. But I'm sure that happens a lot in the money sports for sure, that they are expected to be in the gym more and all that sort of thing. So, but again, Rollins is an academically rigorous school. And, the first thing we do, I don't sit there and tell them you need to get out of class by noon on, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We ask them for their class schedules. They send them to us, and then we build our practice schedule around that. And I like to keep them, it's Orlando. I don't know if you've driven through Orlando traffic, but it's horrible. So we like to stay.
It's terrible.
It's terrible.
Any time of day.
Any big city, I guess, has this problem. But so we like to stay in the box during the week. I don't want them driving across town. We have a great relationship with the Marriott Golf Academy, which is out near SeaWorld, but it's 35 minutes without too much traffic when you're going down I-4. And I just don't want, I don't want the responsibility of our players either getting in their cars or driving, or even us driving too often, to do that. So we try to manage, that as well. We go as a group actually to Marriott on Friday afternoons to work on short game, but we go in the van and they can drive themselves if they want. But anyway, so, so some of our time is commute time. Now I don't have to count that as Kara, but to me, that's more time away from their studies and the other things that they maybe want to do in their lives. So, so I'd say we average 16 to 17 hours, but we are limited to 20 by the NCAA, as is Division I. So
I would have to think that golfers even in collegiate, it's a team sport, but it's also individual. That I would think that just the way that golfers are wired, that they're going to go out, if they need work on their game, that they're going to go out on their own time to the range of the course, and they're going to go practice on, if they need help with their, or not help, but they need work on their putting or their short game or their, whatever they need work on, that they're going to go out there themselves. Again, my ignorance on this is the 20 hours a week is structured practice called by either you or one of the assistants, where if they're going on their own to play or practice, that is completely their own free time. They can practice 40 hours a week that way if they wanted to. Is that?
Yes, that's right.
That correct?
So anything that we mandate or schedule
Okay.
is part of that 20 hours. And then anything they want to do on their own is over and above that, which, is great. And again, if you go someplace that you take online classes or, academics are not particularly strenuous, you'd have no problem practicing twice that much. But, we're just not in a position really for kids to do that. And, I also think college is supposed to be the 4 best years of your life. So, I mean, if you love golf that much that you want to do it in all your waking hours outside of school, then, of course, I'm your college golf coach. I'm going to love that because you're going to get way better. But, I also think it's important. Like, we have this annual thing in the spring called Fox Day. And it's a day that our president decides, and he's the only, well, he and a few others are the only ones who know, and he cancels class that day. And it's always in the spring. It's in April. And my fear is always that we're going to miss it because we're traveling and competing. And we have missed it a few times. But this past, we made it. It was the day after we got back from our conference championship last week. And, I used to, I think one year I tried to schedule practice on Fox Day. That was the worst decision of my entire coaching career. They were totally not into it. I mean, and I just thought, I mean, even though it's in the height of our season, and, obviously we don't want to miss too many days, but, they need to be able to go with their friends to the beach and come back for the picnic on the campus lawn and do all the fun things that you can do on Fox Day. And so so no longer do I require them to do anything on Fox Day. And I even tried one time, I think I set them up at like, okay, well, who wants to play Bay Hill on Fox Day? And I think I did have 3 players that ended up playing, but the others were like, no, we're going to the beach. I'm like, okay, then I'm done, I'm done trying to fool y'all into, getting some practice in. But I mean, it's an important part of their college experience here. And so if we don't miss it because of our travel, then, I'm thrilled for them to, embrace the college experience, not just, grinding on golf all day long. I mean, again, unless you choose that and you love it, then, that's awesome. But, golf is a big part of their college experience, but it's certainly not the only part. So.
To jump topics a little bit, I want to ask you or talk about your career in particular as a coach, and then what you have done in between your time as a coach. So you coached in the mid late 80s, and then you took a job with Nike, and then you went back to coaching, and then took a job with Disney, and then came back to coaching again, if I have the timeline somewhat correct. The shorter durations of your coaching were a year or 2,
Mm-hmm.
the best I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
So was it just, it wasn't the right time for you, or the fit wasn't correct, or just the opportunity that you had to go do something else was much better?
So I started coaching in 1984 when my now ex-husband and I moved to Orlando, because he played the mini tour, and Orlando was the place. He played Space Coast Tour, and big airport, you can get to where you need to go to play in other events. And so anyway, so we moved here in 1984, and I started coaching here. At that time, the job was 9 months part-time, and I think it paid $5,400. That even in 1984, that wasn't a lot of money. So, I also added, I worked in our business services office at Rollins as a telecommunications assistant. And this will really date me. My job at telecommunications assistant, we were putting landlines in all of the dorm rooms, like phones, real phones with, so that was my job. We set up a long
cords and everything else.
Yeah, it was right. I mean, exactly. And anyway, so I did that and did that for 3 years.
Were they at least the
push button?
Were they at least the punch button phones?
I
and
think
not the
so, but
rotary?
I don't honestly remember. I'd have to ask my old boss about that. But anyway, but it was a great way to get to know the school. I mean, I obviously had a lot of interaction with the business side of things, and then obviously as a golf coach in the athletic portion. And but my husband made the PGA Tour in 1987, and I just thought about it, and I thought, he's traveling and everything. I mean, this could be his, he might not get his credentials back. And then, he traveled all that time. And I thought, so, we decided that I would leave Rollins in May of 87, and I would travel with him. And sure enough, he lost his PGA Tour card after that year. And so then I'm like, okay, well, now what do I do? I mean, I've been a college golf coach. I don't think I want to work for AT&T or whoever they were at the time. I didn't want to be in telecommunications. It's my life. So I looked, there was no, LinkedIn, there was nothing, I mean, no internet. So I looked in the want ads, and there was a job for a training position for management in a small department store company in Orlando. And it said no experience necessary. I'm like, great, because I've been a coach, right? So I apply, and the lady that interviewed me was a Rollins graduate and loved golf. So I'm like, that worked out pretty well. So
Wow.
I end up in their management training program and worked for this small department store company for, I don't remember, 2 or 3 years. And then a friend of mine who worked there, she had gone on to Disney to work in their retail and merchandise operations and the buying office. And she said, well, send me your resume, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay. But I was happy where I was. It was fine, but I sent it to her, and she said, hey, they want to talk to you. I'm like, okay. So I went out to Disney and chatted with them. And, next thing I know, they're offering me a job and in merchandise operations. So I ended up running some of the Disney shops that were in the hotels along Hotel Plaza Boulevard. And then I transitioned to run a sports store in what's now Disney Springs, but it was called Disney Village Marketplace in 19 whatever it was when I started. So I ran Team Mickey's Athletic Club, which was great. I mean, because it was sports apparel, and it was both, it had character product as well as inline product, and that was really fun. And then they had a buyer operator exchange program because they wanted the buyers and the people that ran the stores to kind of understand a little bit more about what the other half does. So I signed up for that and got into that, which was great. The irony was, I believe all the buyers that went out into the field, they all quit. So I'm like, wow, that must have been a really horrible experience for them. So then the buying office jobs came open, and I thought, well, I kind of enjoyed developing, product for the theme parks and resorts. So I applied and ended up, getting to do that, which was awesome. Now, all of this time I'd kept in touch with Rollins. I mean, we lived in the area and everything. So I stayed on top of what they were doing and got to know, a lot the coaches in between and all that. And I think I'm not a corporate America type of personality. I mean, I'm not that I'm well, I don't know how to describe it. My dad always said I don't suffer fools gladly, and he was probably right about that. But so the corporate America just wasn't for me, and I just really miss the energy of the college campus and that sort of thing. And so the AD called me and he said, hey, the coaching job is open again. And I go, well, you can't afford me now, and he goes, well, just come on in and chat. Let's just chat, we'll see, blah, blah, blah. So I come back in, and of course, you get on campus and the kid, it's just an energy of a college campus is fun. Right. And so, so he's talking to me, and he, well, I know we can't match what Disney paid you, but blah, blah, blah. We'd love to have you back, that yada, yada. And I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So I came back in 1996, and then I had a friend that I worked with at Disney who she and her husband moved out to Portland and worked for Nike. And she said, hey, they're going to start a women's apparel and accessories division. And she said, I want to send your resume. And I was like, they'll never hire me. I mean, why, whatever. But I sent the resume and everything and flew out there to interview. Still not thinking, I thought, well, it's good practice. If nothing else, you just kind of keep your options open, whatever. And flew out there and really didn't expect to be offered the job, and certainly, thought, well, it's a long way to go and all that sort of thing. But came back and they offered me the job. And, to be on the ground floor at a company like, I mean, I've worked now for, between Nike and Disney, two of the most powerful brands in the world. And I just thought, boy, to be part of the ground break, just part of that, building process for, in their golf business. They just signed Tiger. So, I mean, everything was just kind of exploding. So decided to, leave and do that. And, I felt I was in 87. I didn't really, I don't think I really understood, the impact or the legacy. I mean, I was 20 something years old, and, I felt terribly about leaving in 97. Because, I love the kids on the team. I mean, I still keep in touch with a lot of them. In fact, this is how old I am. I'm now recruiting one of those girls' daughters. So, which is, I'm like, wow,
Oh, wow.
that really means I'm old, but it kept in touch with all of them, but felt badly, for leaving them, not in the lurch, because I helped them find a very good, very competent, Marla Weeks and her husband, Kevin, were great, I think, stewards of the program, for that period of time. So, but then I, worked for Nike, and then I realized I didn't like corporate America. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I'm not a corporate America type of personality. And I ended up coming back and taking the sales rep job for Nike Golf here in Orlando, but again, just realized, man, I really missed, the energy of a college campus, and, just the relationships with the kids. I don't think I felt that quite as much when I was younger, because I was younger and didn't, but I think when you get older, you really understand the importance of those relationships. And so anyway, 3 years later,
Yeah,
Marla and her husband moved to
the connection
Chicago.
and the ability to.
Huh?
I'm sorry. I was going to say the connection and the ability to, as you said, the energy on a college campus, and you're dealing with kids who can't wait to make their mark in the world. This is their first step, and
Mm-hmm.
and to have influence over that in some way, shape, or form is very. I have to say, not even the success you've had, but the fulfillment that you've had
Right.
in being able to be a part of that.
Yeah. Well, and at the end of the day, that is the bigger part, because the joke was, when I came back in 2000, it was the same AD that hired me before, and I go, I can't believe you called me back, and he goes, I can't believe we let you. We didn't want you to go in the first place. I'm like, well, that was nice. I said, well, you really can't afford me now, and he goes, no, I know, but let's, and so long story short, I'm back, it was just, I think. I mean, as much as I'd love to say it would have been great to have been a coach since 1984, but I really do think that the opportunities that Disney and Nike offered me, gave me a lot. First of all, gave me an understanding of what the real world and corporate America and that sort of thing. I mean, I have a little bit more of an understanding of that than if I'd just been the coach at Rollins since 1984. And, it allowed me some fabulous contacts that have helped our student athletes, in their own paths in a lot of different ways. I mean, Mike Forsey is a great example of that. Now at Painter Golf, we support their brand, and they support us, and it's awesome, to see that. And my friend Lou Delfino, that I knew at
They're the
Nike.
best shoes I've ever worn.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah,
And
those are the best. I told Mike that numerous times.
yeah, for sure. I mean, there are very few. I mean, I can't think of a brand that our entire team comes back and says, "Yeah, they're really comfortable. These are great." And Painter Golf has been that. So but I mean, that was a connection made at Nike. And then my friend Lou Delfino, he works for Galvin Green now, and we've gotten some fabulous outerwear and apparel from them. And it's just and not just that, but being able to I've had the girls have I had two girls that had to have a conversation with a Fortune 500 company talking about how they dealt with, the COVID situation, blah, blah, blah. Well, I have a friend who's on the board of directors, and I worked for her at Disney. She's on the board of directors of a Fortune 500 company. So I put her in touch with them,
Wow.
and they both made A's on the project. And, so just that kind of thing is just, and I think, so there's a joke, and I mean, we laugh about it because I say it when it's least, true, but they call, the team calls me the genius every now and then. And it's just because I've been around so long, and I have these random people in my life that, I just happen to have a connection with this or that or the other. And, so, every now and then I'll do something, and the girls will be like, "Oh, wow, that's great, coach." I'm like, well, I'm in the Hall of Fame, that's why they call me the genius. And, just because, like I said, this is none of that. And, none of the things that you listed, as part of my, career or whatever. I've been the one fortunate to be holding the van keys and paying the Starbucks bill. I mean, that's really, and I think I have an understanding of what a good fit for a Rollins student athlete is. And so, again, I think it's just been great to be part of the conversation for so long. But yeah, so it's been an interesting and circuitous route. But I think that's the other thing I hope that the girls can understand through my path through my career life is, you there's all sorts of connections that can be made, and you can step off the path you're on and take another path and come back to that path, or whatever it is. I mean, if you can envision yourself doing it, you can do it. So
As you work at Nike and in the golf division on the ground floor, I've got to ask you this, and then you saw the progression, and then now they're obviously have withdrawn from the golf industry and from the hard goods side quite some time ago, and now I think they're kind of slowly maybe moving out of the apparel. Or that's what some of the rumors are. What do you, and there's been many rumors floated around about what they did wrong as far as their golf division. Being as someone who was there from the beginning and spent some time in that, and then seeing it from the outside as a coach or what would be a consumer as a golfer and someone within the business, is there anything that you saw that were just, hey, you guys, maybe if you pivoted this way, things would go a completely different direction? Because it didn't quite seem like they ever got a grasp of how to get everything going outside of having Tiger.
right,
If you take Tiger out of it, then, which is a lot to say, but if same thing if you take Michael Jordan out of it,
right,
you don't have a basketball. I mean, the movie with Matt Damon, and that was as he played Sonny Vaccaro. That was
right.
very, very interesting. That was when I was playing basketball, and I mean that took me back to being a teenager. I thought it was great. But was there something that you thought that they should have been doing and weren't, that might have made a difference, that they would
Well,
still be around?
so I think, first of all, the equipment business was probably a huge financial drain. I mean, it's just really hard to compete, in that realm. Golf balls, I mean, I understand why they felt the need. I mean, that's just, you see the brand that much more. You put the ball on the tee and there's a swoosh on it. Okay. But there are an awful lot of very good ball manufacturers who are pretty solid, in their share of the market and that sort of thing. I think that was probably too big of a bite of the apple, and I think that erodes your credibility when that happens too. I really think if they had, if the equipment, I think we should have probably left the equipment business alone, other than golf bags. I mean, there were some fabulous people, and Mike was part of that. Mike Forsey was part of that too. Making some really cool golf bags and I mean some really cool accessories. And I think if they'd stuck to that and to the apparel and footwear obviously too, I think the equipment was probably too big of a thing to try and tackle. And I think it was part of too big, too fast, and part of the problem was, especially initially, was how the product was not designed, but then the whole process of design to delivery. I mean, there were a lot of things that were in catalogs that you'd say, well, no, we didn't make that, or whatever. I mean, there were a lot of kind of hiccups in that along the way. I also think we tried to be we changed our target market too many times. I think we were too far ahead of the game from the athletic look in golf. I don't think the country club elite golf membership was ready for some of the products that we put out. I mean, we from the women's division, we had a cool bodysuit polo, we had a cool dress, and we were just 20 years really almost too soon. And I think that, coupled with the fact that the people with the disposable income, were, especially at that time, were the country club folks that had a lot of disposable income, but they're, not very many of those women are going to wear a bodysuit polo, right? But now it'd be
No, not in public, at least.
right. But but now, I mean, that stuff would be, I mean, it would be great, but I think it was too early. And then, we did a line of Tiger's product from Italy, which was fabulous stuff. I mean, it was so well made. But I think, if you want really well made golf apparel, Nike's probably not the people you would go to get it, right? And so I think it was just, I think they underestimated the fierceness of the golf market in general. I mean, from what I can see, I mean, we went after this younger market, and then that wasn't right. So we're, shifting over. And then we did this one line, a special, tiger from Italy. But I mean, we needed to have more, I think, brand continuity. And I think that was missing. But, again, I think had they not gone all into the equipment market, a lot of that money could have been, funneled into marketing, what we did do well better.
Yeah, in the later years, as far as the equipment, I talking to a number of club engineers that I know that said that the blades, in fact, the ones that Tiger played,
Mm-hmm.
which would make total sense, that they said those were some of the best irons ever made as
Right.
far as the design of them, the heel to toe length, the height, the hosel depth, the hosel length, and all things considered. In fact, and many of them went on to say that the Sasquatch driver, the square one, that was a very, very good design. That the problem was that the shafts were not made to handle that style of head. So with
Right.
the torquing and everything else
Mm-hmm.
that goes on with the square head versus a teardrop or oval shaped head. So yeah, I mean, what you said of Nike, them being too far ahead, and timing, as we know in life, is most everything.
Right. Right.
I mean, I've watched a number of TED Talks on venture capitalists that had a list of all these companies that they said, we thought that these were going to be grand slams, and we invested heavily and we lost everything. And then they had a very small list of Yahoo and Google and Apple and all these other ones. They said, we never thought these were going to make it. And they obviously did. And the one VC researcher said he went back and he started to look at why all these things failed. It was not money. It was not the product. It was not the teams. It was not any of those things. But he said it was timing in the market, whether the public wasn't ready for those things, or the rest, the complementary industries that would be utilized in that field were not compatible quite yet to whatever product that was going to need support from.
Right.
And I listen to hear what you're saying. Nike was either bouncing around too much or couldn't figure that out at the time in real time. And just my limited knowledge of history at Nike is obviously the very creative mindset that Tucker Hatfield's and reading Shoe Dog, Phil Knight's book, that it was never really structured and, hey, here's what we identified, here's what we're going to do. And it's just like, okay, here's what we want to go get. Let's go get it.
Right.
And it seems like that might have been the same mantra when they got into the golf. And given the success they had, why would they not think it was going to work in golf as well? And it's bad. I was kind of saddened when they left. I was never a huge Nike supporter. I love their golf balls, as crazy as that sounds, as you said. Maybe they shouldn't. That was a very fierce deal. But it was sad to see when a major player like a Nike was withdrawing from the golf industry. I think for whatever reason, it didn't work out. But I think it was a sad day that golf had lost a major player of that caliber within the industry.
Right. Yeah. And, I think, I guess if they want to look at it from a strictly, dollars and cents standpoint, I think I heard something like the Air Force Ones, the kids version of the Air Force One, made more money for them than the whole Nike golf division did, or something crazy like that. It's expensive to be in golf, right? And I just think that it's a unique environment. The green grass, pro shops, and then we always had that battle because there were a lot of Nike outlet stores here in Orlando. Well, we also have a lot of beautiful golf courses. Why, as a club pro, would I want to buy Nike, apparel and put it in my pro shop if it's being sold on International Drive for, a lot less than what I'm selling for it with my logo on it? I just think that this market is just unique to anything that Nike's ever tried to get into. But like I said, the product was fabulous. Some of the things were, you just be like, wow, that's really something. But I think, again, I think Nike was a perceived as a younger brand, especially back then. And, you have I don't know, there's a lot of people have gone out of it, the Arias, the Mark Scott, the, whatever these other men's apparel brands that are now gone, even Ashworth and that sort of thing. You're competing against brands that are truly, that's what green grass people, that's what, those pro shops and pros and everything, that's what they understand. Titleist, FootJoy, obviously the behemoths of the of the industry now. So
The one of the things that I found very interesting that I want to ask you about was given the fact that you had worked for Disney and Nike, two of the largest iconic brands or corporations in America going back many decades. What did you learn at each of those? Is because they're known for a very, very good and fantastic culture and mantra, and they stick to it. Did what did you learn from working at those places, and then how did you utilize that when you came back to coaching?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, their culture is, incredibly, cohesive. And I mean, especially, when I worked there, I mean, Disney, I mean, they both now gotten so big that it's not at all the same as, when I worked for them. But, um, I think for Disney, the guest experience, and front of the house, et cetera, and you're a cast member and all of that. I mean, I understood what that meant, that, we're selling t-shirts. I mean, in both places, what I'm doing, I'm selling t-shirts, right? Or I'm developing
Mhm.
t-shirts or whatever. But, there is a value and a power to that brand that you have to be mindful of it all the time. I mean, when you're selling, when you're displaying product, when you're selling product, when you're talking to the public, you have to understand the importance of the brand, and you can't at all disrupt or diminish the show. And so I was always mindful, of that I wanted to make sure that their interaction with me, their purchase of the product that I helped either, develop or put out, you know, let's make sure the shirts are steamed before we put them on the rack. I mean, I know it's a great new product, but let's make sure they're not wrinkled, and let's make sure that the locker or the changing rooms are clean, or whatever that is. I mean, you're part of the show. You're there to help make the show successful. And you also realize how much these people pay for both Nike and Disney products. And, they want the quality and everything to match, the price. And so I think establishing a culture, establishing things that are not negotiable, you know, um, I think is really important. I mean, there are a lot of things. I mean, I tell my team all the time, details matter. It's easy to get the big things, the really big things right. And a lot of people get the really big things right, but the details matter. And both places, I think I understood the importance of the details really being important. And that's kind of something that has, lived with me ever since. That, I mean, you, I understand the power of the Rollins Golf brand. I mean, when you have, four alums who are in the World Golf Hall of Fame, and you have people like Peggy Kirk Bell, when she was alive, was one of my dearest friends and mentors. And, and I tell our team all the time, we're standing on the things that the players that came through this program when we didn't have anything have made all of this possible for you. And I always want them to be mindful of that. And so there's a wall. We have an indoor facility, and there's a wall of graphics that are pictures over the decades of the players and the program and just all the levels of success. And I told the girls, I said, I want these people looking you in the eye every single day, so that when you come in here, you realize that this program deserves your very best, because they gave their very best to make all of what you have now possible for you. And so all of that is kind of part of the Disney and Nike, way of thinking, that I just kind of, yeah, you believe it. And like I said, one of the reasons that I've never coached anywhere else is, well, first of all, who's going to hire me 3 different times? But that's a whole separate story. But more than that, you know, I understand, the mission of Rollins is to develop global citizens and responsible leaders who go on to lead meaningful careers and productive lives. I I am all in on that. My AD is not saying, well, how many championships have you won, and how, all of that. I mean, yes, we want to win, but winning is a byproduct of that mission statement. And I'm in total agreement with that. And I understood the Nike, way of doing things, and I understood the Disney way of doing things, and was happy to, to learn from that, and be better because of it.
That's very interesting you say that. I had on one of the first episodes that I did, it was a very dear family friend. He was a coach of mine when I played basketball and mentor of mine still to this day. And Randy Soma, and Randy ran JCI Johnson Controls Incorporated. And I think when he started, they were about $800 million a year. And when he left, they were over 20 billion. And not to get too much into that episode, but to go back to what we talked about earlier about you getting showing a lot of leadership qualities and developing trust with your players and what you do for them. And one of the things that he did was that they hired a independent company to come in and do a survey of the employees, the hourly workers, and their opinions of upper management. And the feedback, they changed a lot of things. One of them was management would I think it was once a month or twice a month, would need to go in the cafeteria and eat lunch with the regular employees. But aside from those things, one of the things that he told me that he found out, because he wrote a book called Leader Shit, S-H-I-T, when many years after he left. And he basically, I think this book came out, he'll kill me if I get it wrong. I know I'm going to, roughly about 7 or 10 years ago, really before all this was mainstream, that, my God, are these companies, what are they doing? It just, nothing makes any sense. And he updated it and wrote the new one. I think it's Where Are Our Leaders? I've got it sitting right over here. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I've got 6 on my nightstand that I've got to get to. But within that, he said, he was on a lot of corporate boards once they found out that he had retired. And he said that these boards were not doing anything what their mission statement said. They would sit in these meetings and they would cut staff to make stock projections, or make earnings projections so that their stock would go up, and then give themselves bonuses. And he said, hang on a minute, we're not living what our mission statement says we're doing, and all you have to do is really do that, and the company will go way past beyond what you're doing now. And it just, he said he fought an uphill battle until finally he had enough, that he just said, I'm done. But to hear you say that you follow the Rollins mission statement, and the results it produces is so refreshing in a world that needs that very badly. So thanks for saying that. And I know you didn't plan on saying it. It's, hey, here's what I do. And but even equally as important is you're getting the support from the people who are the board of trustees, or the athletic director, I'm sure the school president, and everybody is 100% behind that. And hey, we're all committed to this. And it's just mind-boggling to me that people can see the success that y'all have had historically. And well, here's what you do. It's simple in that you follow these guidelines. You set this, you make the beacon what you're going to do, and then you follow that. And if you have ups and downs, okay, we'll get through it. We'll get better. And why more corporations don't do that and they sit there and struggle, to me, I just shake my head and say, I don't get it.
Right.
It's easy to put in place. I mean, it's hard to do on a daily basis, but the success is there in the end. And it's like, I don't want to get your competition to start doing this. And next thing you know, they're really giving you a hard time at national championships.
Right.
But
They already are. Don't worry
colleges,
about that.
businesses,
So,
corporations. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if Apple comes calling you next, given the iconic brand you work for.
That's right. I
just
thought maybe
listening to some of the things that
Coca-Cola.
they've
That's what
done,
I
as
was
you mentioned.
thinking, but yeah, I'll take Apple too. That would be so.
And the only reason I bring that up, I remember listening, is it Derek Shivers or Shivers, I think was his name, was he was on one of the design teams for either the iPod or one of the modern versions of the iPhone. And he found out that one of the things that they did when they shipped an Apple product was that he changed, or got Steve Jobs to change, was he said, ship it fully charged. Because here, back in the 90s, or everybody in early 2000s, everyone's so excited to get their iPhone and then the iPod, and then they want to play it really bad, and they got to go charge the battery. He said, let's start shipping them fully charged. So it's those little things, that steaming the shirts, like you said, when they were up there, because everybody, if they're going to pay X dollar, top dollar, they don't mind doing it, but that you need to give them the top dollar experience as well.
Right. Well, and just like we said, I mean, details matter. I mean, for him to have thought of that, to charge it before, absolutely. I mean, but because like I said, people can get the big things right, but when you drill down and really try to find things that separate you from the others, details are what do that. And I there's another cliche that I tell the team all the time that I have yet to have disproven, but I always tell them, people have time for what they want to have time for, and people have money for what they want to have money for. And it's amazing how true that turns out. I mean, obviously, there's segments of the population that aren't, it's not true, but, for most of us, that's what it ends up being. And so, I mean, I tell them that, but that and details matter. I mean, these are the things that separate, you know, mediocre people from high achieving people. And Nick Saban is the one who said, look, mediocre players don't like high achievers, and high achievers don't like mediocre people. And it's true, so nobody, we want to surround ourselves with people that are going to make us better. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to ask you, because Conrad Ray at Stanford is a friend of mine. Conrad lived here in Hilton Head for about 11 years and got to know him very well, played a lot of golf with him. And he was one of my first guests on the show as well. And I asked him about the recruiting process and how he goes about that, especially being at Stanford Golf, which is obviously has its rich history as well. And one of the things that was surprising to me that I didn't even think of was he said that the players that they recruit, all of them can shoot 66 or 68 on any given day. So one of the things that they look at as much is their academics, and that they'll even talk to some of their coaches and even maybe if they go really deep, some of their teachers in school to see the type of person that they are, or look at what they're doing in their community. Do you have anything that's similar as far as your recruiting process, or what sort of criteria do you go through? Is it more of if a kid is maybe not shooting quite the scores that they need to really make an impact right away, but you see a lot of potential with them, that you will bring them in, or is there a certain order that you go through? What is your
I mean, I
process
guess
like?
that's kind of evolved over the years. I mean, one of the things that we are mindful of is I can't have a roster of 20 because, that just means we don't have our own golf course. If we did, that'd be no problem. But, I want to make sure that we give an opportunity for whether you're our number 1 or number 8, that everybody has a chance to compete. And so, I try to keep the roster no bigger than 8. So, maybe back in the day, you'd have more opportunity. I would call a kid like that a project, somebody that's still developing or growing, and they need your help to get to that next level. There isn't as much time now for that as there used to be. So those kids that come, if they're in that boat, they have to be really self-motivated because, it's a lot. If you come to a team that, you're struggling to make that top 5. I mean, there are people that will thrive in that, and there are people that will fail, and so, and I don't want anyone coming here skating through just for the free gear, just for the free painter shoes. That's not what we're here to do. We're here to, to give people a great college experience. And to me, the first part of that is competing. So I really have to feel pretty sure that even if there's somebody that's still developing, that I can still give them an opportunity to play, intercollegiate golf, even their first year being here. We're not into red shirts. We're not into, any of that sort of thing. I mean, I want them here and being an active part of our program from the minute they set foot on the campus. So, because we're a 4-year school, I mean, you shouldn't come to Rollins if you're on the 5 or 6 year plan, because it's not cheap. And it's just, you're meant to be here and be done in 4 years, unless there's an illness or an injury or some sort of situation that precludes you from doing that. But I think, part of the hard part of how recruiting is done now, so much of it is online, right? I mean, we're doing video calls with kids from, another continent, or, you're interacting on direct message and Instagram. And there are a lot of different paths now. And, the value of an in-person visit, or, just multiple times meeting with these people, those days seems like are long gone. And I'm really old school, and I like to get to know them, to know that it would be a good fit. And part of that too is, when a kid tells me where they're, if they do tell me where they're looking, which a lot of them do not now, if they're not looking at schools that line up with our values as Rollins, then I'm probably not looking at the right kids. To be honest, I'd rather lose kids to a Georgetown or a Rhodes or, a Stanford. I mean, it'd be great, but I don't lose too many to Stanford because, they're going to Stanford. But, just a place that has the same level of academic rigor, even Ivy League schools. I mean, we're the Harvard of the South, so we don't mind. My former assistant is now the head coach of the women's team at Harvard, so I'm always joking with her to send me her academic, almost good enough, but not quite, because they always get very good players. So, but I think that's the thing, is it's harder and harder to really get to know these kids to the point that you feel pretty good about whether or not they'll be successful. A lot of it is a crapshoot, and also it's a crapshoot because their phones and their social media and their connectivity is such a big part of their lives, and that can take them down a rabbit hole, or that can lead them to the promised land, depending on how they deal with all that. And you just don't know that either. There are a lot of things that you just don't know, and it's a little bit tougher now to really hone in on the kids that you really know will be successful.
With Orlando being very international, you get the international airport and it flies to Europe and other places. That I would have to assume that has helped your recruiting process. But does that make it take your recruiting of European players to another level of difficulty, or are some of those kids coming over here to play in some of the bigger junior tournaments that makes it easier? Maybe you've been told about them, you've talked to them FaceTime or over text or whatever, and you can see what they're doing over there, but then you get to see them in person and how their character and how they handle themselves is over here.
Right. I mean, I think Orlando is a huge recruiting advantage because of the size of the airport and the fact that you really can get almost anywhere in the world, in a hop, skip, and a jump. And it's a lot different when you're flying in and then you've got another 3 hours, or you've got to take a puddle jumper to a small college town or whatever. So, and not to mention the fact that, you can play golf year round here. So, there are a lot of huge advantages to being here in Orlando. And also think, now with the internet and the availability of the kids to search, rosters and history and all of that sort of thing, we don't have to mail out media guides anymore. We don't even make them anymore. It's just, you look at, your online presence is what you have. But they're aware. I mean, when I get contacted by a European player or, an international player, oh, I noticed that you have many international players. Like, for example, I have 7 players on my roster, and they're from 7 different countries. So, it's definitely an international thing. And, but then for next year, our 3 incoming players are all American. So it really just kind of depends. I don't really go after one particular, area or whatever. I mean, we've had great success, with Swiss players over the years. So I think once, at a small country like that with a relatively insulated national team, they know exactly where all their, country women are. And, so we had a kind of a nice pipeline with that for several years. And so, yeah, so, I mean, I think a lot of it depends on, how they hear about us, but there are, between the Orange Bowl and the Publix Doral, there are so many international kids coming here to play, at some point during the year that, if we really need to see somebody, we don't probably have to fly all the way to Europe or to Asia to watch them. It is helpful. I mean, it's helpful to be seen at these bigger international tournaments, but it's probably not a necessity anymore. So, it's a fun trip. I've taken a couple of international recruiting trips. I think I went to Sweden and I went to Scotland. But I probably don't need to spend the school's resources doing that. I mean, I can drive down to the Orange Bowl and watch them play at the Biltmore or whatever. And, and certainly with the Hurricane Junior Tour and the AJGA and the FSGA, I mean, there's so many, great, associations doing some really great tournaments where they have a global reach too. So unfortunately, we don't have to go too far.
We talked about the NIL a little earlier, and the monkey wrench that is thrown into where kids driving Ferraris or parading around in jewelry and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult has that made your job as recruiting, as far as you're going to recruit this player, yet there is almost little to no reciprocating allegiance to the school or the team,
Right.
that they can jump ship anytime they want to? It's got to make it extremely difficult and or frustrating for someone in your position.
Well, it's funny. I joke with our team all the time. I mean, between the transfer portal and the NIL, I mean, there are a lot of programs that have a lot of resources that we don't have. I mean, we're not writing you a cost of living check every month. I mean, we're not setting you up with a major brand to, be an ambassador for them. I mean, that's not what we do. And, I found Nick Saban's retirement message very telling. I mean, he said, this is, the NCAA is not at all what it was before. And I think he kind of saw all of this coming, and he's like, he doesn't need to prove anything to anybody else. And, so I mean, my joke about the transfer portal with our team is, there are all these kids wanting to get out and start over and everything. And I go, I can't get any of you people to leave, So anyway, but again, thankfully they have good senses of humor, but we don't have very many kids leaving. I mean, and again, I hope it's because A, they're having a great college experience at Rollins, and B, they were a good fit for our program. And, so I think those two things together, our program, we've been fortunate to get some great transfers. We have, a kid that came from a mid-major, and she's been a great addition. I mean, she's still trying. I mean, we're very, highly academic, institution, but she still has a 4.0 through, her first semester here, which is awesome. And, so I think the transfer portal is dangerous because we really have made it so easy for these kids to, oh, I'm not getting the playing time. Oh, coach doesn't like me, whatever. We're making it easy for them to quit, or to just, start over again. And, I kind of had a chat with our team not too long ago about adversity. And I said, part of this process, being an adult is learning to how you deal with adversity and learn and grow from it. And, I thought, boy, we've smoothed the path for them so much. I mean, we worked with Stephen Sweeney putting, which was a fabulous opportunity. We work with Squad U for team dynamics and for individual peak performance. We have a strength and conditioning coach, Scott Shepard, who's fabulous and is part of the Golf Forever group and part of Advent Health group. I mean, anything you could need, we have a Sprinter van to take you back and forth to practice. You've got, painter shoes waiting for you in your locker room. You got free balls, free gloves. Everything is smooth. All you have to do is show up to the van on time so that when they do face adversity on the course, they're not ready for it all the time, because the adversity is we've made it easy for them to succeed. And I thought, I mean, not that I want to force them into some sort of adversity, but I do think that the transfer portal is kind of that too. I mean, any adversity, I got to change that up. How about you sit down and try and work it out? I got kind of an indirect communication from a swing coach whose kid was a first semester freshman at a Division I school. And he, reaches out to me and says, well, she's not happy there, blah, blah, blah. And I go, how long has she been there? Well, 2 months. I'm like, we need to be the adults in the room and say, look, you need to talk to your coach. You need to figure this out. And then if you're still unhappy at the end of a full year, okay, but you can't just, I got to get out. I mean, the coach has changed, so I tell people all the time, I know that people do choose programs for the coaching staff. I get it. And, and I'm all for that, of course, because here I am. But I think, when a coach leaves, I tell kids all the time, you need to take golf out of the equation and say, if I weren't playing golf, would I still be happy at Rollins? And, if the answer is yes, then this is really where you need to go. But I think when they're so quick to leave because a coach leaves, I just think they need to learn more resilience and more grit. And I'm a little worried that we're making that harder, not easier.
Yeah, I think I had a Dr. Tom Seeger. He's the CEO of Morosco Forge on, and they're an ice bath company. They're the top of the line ice bath company. Rogan has one. I think Huberman has. All the big names have one. And we were talking about the David Goggins, and when Huberman had him on, they were talking about the part of the brain, and I can't remember the technical term, but it's developed like a muscle. But you have to face adversity or do challenging things in order for it to develop. And
Mhm.
obviously, David Goggins is always doing something that's challenging or that he really doesn't want to do, whether it's running 120 miles or whatever. But what he also said is if you don't exercise that part of the brain, I mean, if you only do things that come easy or that are comfortable for you to do, then that part of the brain, if it was developed, it will undevelop,
Mhm.
kind of like a muscle.
Mhm.
And you continually have to do things on a regular basis that are either uncomfortable or uh, hard or challenging or whatever phrase you want to fill in the blank in order for you to keep that in shape. And I think, to your point, the more resilient somebody becomes, and I have a very difficult time. Earlier in my career, I was much too hard, according to the students, on kids that were very good amateurs going to college and even into their college years. And the parents would come to me and said, so and so thinks, we think you're being maybe you're pushing them too hard.
Mm.
And I said, look, the only reason I'm pushing them so hard is I've played at the next level in the professional. I know how difficult that is going to be.
Mhm.
The reason I'm pushing them hard now is if they think it's hard in college, wait until they get so now they're thrown out into the world, and now they've got to make their own travel plans. Where are they going to get their golf balls? Where are they going to get their gloves? They're going to buy stuff that's on sale at whatever PJ Superstore is closest to them, or they're going to be taping so they can have money to go either eat or pay the next entry fee. I said, it's going to get excruciatingly hard. And I'm only trying to do that now because once they turn pro and knowing how hard that is, now I will become their biggest cheerleader and I will not be pushing them anymore
Right.
because they're going to push themselves and it's going to be hard enough. But
Mhm.
yeah, and I have not had many juniors. Maybe it's because I was too hard and the word got around, but I haven't had many. I haven't had many lately. I have a couple, but yeah, and a very good friend of mine told me he played big time Division I sports. I said, what was the hardest thing once you graduated? Because he got drafted 8th round. He ended up not making it after he tried playing for a little while, and he said college athletics does not prepare you for life. He said everything's done for you. Your food's ready for you. Your laundry is basically done. Your equipment's given to you. Anything you need, you ask for it, and they give it to you.
Mhm.
He said you get out in the real world, it's not happening. Now you're a big time athlete. It's only going to continue, but for the majority of athletes, there's a number of people you've probably seen it, the video going around where there's a lecture that says this is how many high school athletes there are in the
Mm.
country. This is how many are going to go on to play college athletics. Here's how many are going to go play Division I, and here's how many are going to go pro. And it's like 0.1% of the high
Right.
school kids that play sports. So it's these kids that get a very big eye opening, and I can't blame them because you can't see that far in advance. You can't understand how difficult life can be until you experience it, and you don't have anybody doing it for you. You have to do it all on your own, and it's a big step in life when going to college obviously is big, but walking off that stage with your diploma and out into the world is even a bigger step. And trying to get them to understand, I think you're doing them a very, very big service to say adversity is a good thing.
Right.
Accept it, and do the best you can.
Right. For sure.
If they came to you and said, Julie, we'll make you queen for the day of the NCAA, or we'll make you queen for a year, how would you change that how would you change that process? What would be, if you could wave a magic wand, what would be the first thing you would do to change it?
That's a good question. I I think it kind of goes back to I would make rules more sport specific. Instead of I mean, there are just some rules that are arbitrary. You can understand why they're necessary in football, basketball, baseball, the revenue, the money sports, or whatever you want to call it. But, then you have sports like golf where, a lot of what you have to do doesn't fit, the doesn't fit the sport and what you're trying to do as coaches. So,
Mm,
I mean, I think I would try to find a way to make it more, you know, that the rules are for each sport are different, and more adaptable to those particular sports. Um, Also, I mean, the NIL. I mean, the problem is that the Pandora's box is now open. I don't think you can put the toothpaste back in the tube, but this NIL thing, and even the transfer portal, it's just a lot. And I mean, now you see these super, not power fives. We're going to end up with like power two or three conferences that are basically going to run the rest of the world.
Hmm.
And, what do we do about that? I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think I'd want that job, frankly, because it's almost, where do you start? And, to me, the NIL and the transfer portal have been, I think that it just hasn't turned out the way I think anybody thought it would or should. And like I said, I think part of it was, saying no, 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 okay, and then the floodgates are open, and now, you know, we shouldn't have. I mean, I go back to the whole thing about, should student athletes be paid, and I'm like, you know, I feel like I'm paying you with a college degree that's going to be meaningful when you're done. You know, I mean,
Hmm.
that's your payment. And I'm okay with your school or whomever making money off of, what you're doing for them, because hopefully you're getting a valuable education. And I don't think we've talked enough about that. I mean, at Rollins, I mean, it costs $75,000 a year to go to school here. So if you're here for 4 years, and let's say you were on a full scholarship, we're not fully funded, but you will have said $300,000 we've given you over 4 years. Not to mention free gear, free travel. I mean, opportunities
Hmm.
for contacts that are going to be
Coaching, you get
incredibly
the
important.
coaching and the experience.
Yes,
Yes,
you know,
all these things.
and I think everybody's like, well, but they're making millions. Well, let them make millions. You're gonna, if you're that good, you're gonna make millions when you graduate. Okay, but let's graduate and let's look at that as, wow. Rollins gave me $300,000 for the course of my, college career, and so I think, I'm not a fan of the NIL. I mean, I've seen all the, the stuff of the kids buying these expensive cars, and we now, our freshmen and juniors have to take a class in basically, how do you handle, this sort of thing? I mean, a financial responsibility, because of, I think the Governor Ron DeSantis felt like these kids shouldn't be just thrown, hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and then, they need they need to be equipped to handle it. And I frankly don't. I think a lot of them are not equipped to handle it, and I think it'd be interesting to see in 10 years what has happened to some of these kids that have gotten all this money. You know, I mean, where are they now? It's kind of like the lottery winners who end up going bankrupt. I mean, I just think it's too
Exactly.
much too soon. And I'd like to put that toothpaste back in the tube, but I don't think that's where we're going to be. Now, that doesn't affect me at all at Division II level. I mean, I'm insulated from all of that. But, even the transfer portal, and as much of the Wild West as that seems to be going on, is, I mean, like I said, we've made it easy for them to, switch. And I get it. It's easy for coaches. Coaches can give up on their, and switch to other jobs or whatever. But, I would say, I hope you've done enough research to know that you're with the coach that's going to help you get better and be better. So,
The the two things that because I'm with you on, you're getting an education in exchange for your time there in the school to be able to promote their program and make money, sell tickets, or whatever they're doing. Um, the two things that I haven't been able to, and I haven't looked into it. I'm not going to look into it. I'm not in the field, but as I have discussions with people like yourself, is one is there is some concern that using an athlete's likeness to really push and make big money. How do you navigate those waters? And again, this is at the big Division I level.
right,
But let's take like what's Deion Sanders' son. You know, the school's really making money off of that. So
right,
how do you protect the likeness of the athlete? And the second is going back to the original one, which I thought was a problem when it was the other way, was if you have a kid that's going to school with limited financial means, how do you get them so that they can go out and have a fun night with their friends, buy a pizza at a pizza joint or a hamburger, or go to the movies, and maybe they're financially strapped. And how, where do you give them either a job at the university to where they can make and have some pocket money to do these things, or what? Those are two questions in my mind of how would those things change, and how should they change so that you can accommodate both, protect the athletes as far as their image and branding going forward, as well as allow them to be a 20-something kid
Right.
and enjoy their college experience.
Well, I think, and again, I'm not in a
Maybe
sport.
that's for brighter minds, but
Right. And I'm not in a sport that has, I don't, I don't have any experience with any of that. First of all, golf is a sport for fairly well-to-do kids. I mean, you don't get a whole lot that are so strapped that they can't afford, so I really shouldn't, I mean, I'm not
yeah,
an expert in
exactly.
this either, but what I would say is maybe we should have figured out a way for those schools that are using a kid's name, image, and likeness. Maybe there was a way to kind of, you know, let the kid be part of the percentage of the income from that particular campaign, right? That everyone, I mean, they all have
Mm-hmm.
analytics now, and they know what marketing opportunities generate, ticket sales or merchandise sales or whatever. I'm all for, if you're selling a Shadur Sanders, is that how you pronounce his name? If you're selling a jersey with his name and number on it, you know how many of those you sold. So, and you know how many of those, have gone out. Well, I mean, how about saying, okay, if we use your name, if we use your number and your name or your likeness, we're going to give you 15% of the benefit from that or whatever. But I mean, no, we just, like I said, we just opened it all up, and you have kids that probably can't, who, if they are financially strapped and all of a sudden they get a huge check from a major apparel brand, well, I mean, are they going to spend that on riotous living, or are they going to, find a financial consultant and help them invest it? I mean, they don't have any experience with it. So that's why I think it's a mistake. I guess I'm okay, like I said, if they're using, your name, image, and likeness, then let's say, okay, here's the standard. You can give that student from 10 to 25% of the proceeds from that campaign, or whatever. But no, we didn't do that. We just opened up the doors and said, let everything come in. So, but I will say, if you're at a big school and they are profiting off what you're doing, you're probably still getting a cost of living. You're still getting a check in addition to your scholarship. I mean, that's happening at even mid-major levels. So, I don't think that those kids are as destitute, once they get to a program like that, as they would have been before. But now, now they can be lured to another school that'll pay them more or give them more NIL opportunities. And then the portals, again, it's just, I think the portal and the NIL are probably not a good combination either. So, but
Yeah,
you're
it
right. I
sounds like
mean, I
throwing
do.
gas on the fire.
Yeah, right. And I mean, I do understand. Like I said, I'm a coach of an elitist sport, so I don't really have kids that are. And I mean, at Rollins, I mean, I don't have kids really struggling to find a dinner or whatever. But I mean, I do think there are a lot of things people don't even people didn't even know about these and this was before NIL. These cost of living checks that these kids get that are over and above their scholarship, and they can do whatever they want with that. So, you know, I don't know. I mean, it's a tough
Wow.
thing. And like I said, I wouldn't want to be the commissioner of the NCAA for love nor money. So,
Well, it's a. I said theoretical. Wave your wand, we'll make you queen for a day, and you can do what you want. So
I'm
it's not
kind.
like you said. It's something that nobody probably really wants to have.
Right. No,
Yes.
because I mean, it's
Um,
just so big. It's just such a big problem. It's such a big institution, and there's so many big problems that affect. I mean, you have Division I problem. You have major Power 5 Division I problems. You got mid-major Division I problems. You got division. The problems are across the spectrum. So,
you got a little bit of time left. We can wrap up with emergency 9. Just 9 random questions that
uh-oh.
we just have fun with here at the end.
Okay.
So the first one and the last one are very they're basically identical for everybody. Everyone in all your 141st episode, I think. So everybody's just pretty much gotten these tweaked to the individual a little bit. First one, but and then the ones in between are modified. But it's always a lot of fun.
Okay.
So the first one is, if you were to play in the Solheim Cup and they're going to get the crowd really pumped up and they're going to play a walk-up song for you the first hole, what song are you going to have them play?
So my joke with my team is I listen to a lot of smooth jazz, and there's a song called "Easy Like Spring" by Peter Cater, and it's instrumental. I mean, it's not at all inspiring, but I listen to it all the time. But I mean, I think my real walk up song would be "The Club Can't Handle Me Right Now." Got to be that, hands down.
All right. Let's see. You're in the last year, your favorite purchase under $1,000.
Ooh, that's a good one. I don't spend much money, so so that's the first problem. I would say I'd say my Allbirds sneakers. So I'm officially old now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not really old, but I've been Nike all my life. But Allbirds are just, I mean, they're so comfortable. So I'd say that. Ooh,
Okay.
no, wait, can I change it?
Hollywood.
No, can I
Okay.
change it?
You can change.
I love Gooder
Yeah.
sunglasses, and I have them in I mean, I match them to my outfit now. So yeah, Gooder sunglasses are definitely a fun purchase for me. And they have to match my Allbird shoes. So
All
there you
right.
go.
Let's see. Hollywood called you. They said, we followed your career. We heard you on the podcast. It's very, very interesting. We're going to make a movie about it. And we're going to let you cast the actress that plays you. Who are you going to have them cast?
Okay. So I have another funny story about that, but I would say I'd love to have Emma Stone because I think she's fabulous, but of course, she can't, right? So I had another golf coach come up to me and say, do you know who you look like? And I'm like, I get this a lot. People are like, I feel like, you seem familiar or whatever. I'm like, okay, where is this going? Kathy Bates. And I'm like, I just remember her from like Misery and all that sort of stuff. So I'd probably end up saying Kathy Bates would be the one to play me in the movie. I'd want Emma Stone. I'd probably get Kathy Bates, but she's a fabulous actress, so I really shouldn't complain either way.
All right. Let's see. If you could sit in a golf cart and talk to anybody for a few hours about anything, golf, life, whatever you wanted to, who would you talk to?
Do they have to be living or no? Anybody?
And no, anybody throughout history. Yep.
I'd love to have more time with my father for sure. Lost him many years ago. I mean, my parents were a big part of of my career all the way through. But I'd also have to say Peggy Kirk Bell. I miss talking to her about golf and about life and politics, etc.
All right. We gave you $25,000 and 2 first-class tickets anywhere you want to go in the world. Where are you going to go?
First class is always nice. I'm not flying to Atlanta on first class. I can tell you that. I'm using them to go somewhere big. I've always wanted to go to Australia, New Zealand. So I'd love to go there. I'd probably go there.
I'm with you on that one. That's a part of the world I have not been to that I'd like to. South Pacific would be very cool.
Yes.
This one I find interesting. The last book that you read, or the one that's on your nightstand now. I'm always curious to hear what guests are reading.
I haven't really started it yet, but I watched the series. Lessons in Chemistry is on my nightstand, definitely. I don't read much during the season. I mean, I'll read a chapter or two of like a golf psychology book or something like that. But I'm looking forward to starting that, Lessons in Chemistry. But I really love Southern literature, and I love historical fiction too. So those two things. I mean, there's always a Flannery O'Connor or Eudora Welty or I'm not so much a Hemingway fan, but and then historical fiction I love, especially around World War II, World War I. Those are awesome. I've read all kinds of books on those, so I'll start that. My problem is I can never remember that I read it, and then I'll start reading. I'm like, and then 3 chapters in, I'm like, oh yeah, I already read this one. So I need to make a list. I think so that would be helpful.
Let's see, a couple more. Who would be on your coaching Mount Rushmore? 4 coaches you could put up there.
In golf coaches.
Yeah, let's narrow it down to golf.
Okay.
But I mean, if you wanted to, you could expand it to any sport. But since we're on the golf, let's say golf coaches,
Um,
and it could be a team coach. It could be a swing coach. Anybody you
oh,
wanted to.
okay. Ooh, wow. All right. I'd say um, I'd put Dot Gunnels from University of North Carolina. I think she was a fabulous ambassador for college women's golf. Betty Lou Evans, same thing, and they need to be together because they were like BFFs as coaches, which was really fun to see that as a player and then as a young coach. Um, I'd probably put I'd put well, how do I get more than four? Come on, give me a few more than four because they some of them go together. Like
We yeah, we can give you an alternate.
okay,
You can alternate one in and out.
okay, so I'd put Pia Nilsson and Lynn Marriott from Vision 54 because I think what they have done has really opened up the whole translating golf psychology in actual to drills and things you can do on course. Bob Rotella would have to be part of it, and then I think David Ledbetter. His daughter Hallie played for me, but I was a fan of his work and teaching, and he really is the father of the swing coach and the entourage and all that. I mean, he did that for so many people for so many years and paved the way for all these people that have come
Mm-hmm.
after that for sure. So how many is
Very
that?
cool.
Like 20? Sorry about that.
A couple more. Well, we can put Pia and Lynn together.
Okay.
So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay.
So we have four and one alternate.
Okay. Great. All right.
Maybe we make half of the face. Get someone who looks somewhat like half their face is one and half their face is the other.
Well, Dot and Betty Lou would be fun having their silhouettes together. So yeah, that'll be fine.
Mm-hmm. All right. Would you rather play Augusta National or have tickets for life?
Tickets for life. I had back surgery a few years ago. I really haven't gotten back into playing, and I've never been. I've had an opportunity to go, and the problem is, obviously, if you're a college golf coach, it's at a bad time of year for you. So, but yeah, tickets for
Mm-hmm.
life. I think it would be fabulous to be there.
All right. And then the last one, in your opinion, as far as golfers are concerned, who's the GOAT? Who's the greatest of all time?
Oof. Well, I mean, I guess Nicholas has won more majors. Um, Mickey Wright was pretty awesome, but I mean, I think Tiger has,
Mm-hmm.
Tiger, I think is the GOAT because, I mean, again, he set the table for I mean, Nicholas and Palmer and all those guys set the table for him, but then he is really what has he's the engine that made this thing go. I mean, the fact that Scotty Scheffler's made $1 bazillion in the last 5 weeks is because of what the excitement that Tiger brought to the tour many years ago. So I'd say Tiger's probably the GOAT.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good. Julie, it's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed you coming on here. We had a great time. I've got to have you on again. And next time I'm going to be in Orlando area, I'm definitely giving you a call and coming and hanging out a little bit.
That would be great. We'd love to have it. So that'd be awesome. I appreciate the opportunity and yeah, enjoy your show. And yeah, it's not, the 9 questions was a little scary, but I think I got through it okay. So yeah.
Dude, you did great. You did awesome.
Thanks.
All right.
Thanks.
Hang out for a little bit. Everyone, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
All right. Sounds good.